So Joe Lauzon is taking on Jonathan Pearce this weekend on the main card of UFC on ESPN 6 Boston Reyes versus Weidman. It's a really good fight. It's a good fight on the main card. Joe Lauzon's a big name, always puts on fun fights, whether he's getting finished or finishing the other guy. He's a good finisher, you know. I think he has a very close to the amount of records for performance of the night bonuses, I believe. He's a beast. He's very past his prime, and that is very obvious because he's been finished or beaten 3 times in a row recently. I have to say I like this fight with Joe Lauzon. I really like this fight for Joe Lauzon. I think he's been overlooked here. I think people are seeming to think that Jonathan Pearce... Listen, if Jonathan Pearce was this streaking up-and-comer, 10-0 from some... and he's some savage and he has some backstory and he's been absolutely decimating guys, Jonathan Pearce is 7-3. Okay? And the guys he is beating are not elite level guys, to say the least. He's coming off the Contender Series. He got a win there over a decent opponent, but before that he fought a guy who has 1-1 and beat him. I don't give that any credit whatsoever. He's been submitted in his career by a guy who's then gone on to be submitted and went 2-1 in their whole career. The guy who submitted him went 2-1 and got submitted themselves the time they... I just feel like Joe Lauzon's going to beat this guy. I feel like this is a perfect moment. I feel like Joe Lauzon, in terms of... I feel like the only thing you can question about Lauzon here is how committed really is here. I feel like he's more committed than he's ever been recently. Because Joe Lauzon's never been the kind of guy who's been on a streak for the title. You know, he's always just lost, and then he's sort of just put on fun fights in between losing. That's sort of what Joe Lauzon does best. He's never really, anyway, recently, been on a massive streak for the title and then lost. I feel like this is a perfect moment for Joe Lauzon to get a really good, clean retirement. It's in his home place. He's in Boston. If he wins this one, it'll be a perfect retirement. If he wins it in good enough fashion, he'll get a nice little bonus to carry on into the rest of his life. I'm feeling like that's what Joe Lauzon's doing here. This would be a fairy tale ending. And I feel like that's what he's going to do. Because Jonathan Pearce is not elite level. If Jonathan Pearce, like I said before, was an undefeated guy coming in, destroying everyone, I'd probably go Jonathan Pearce here. I feel like Joe Lauzon's going to beat this kid. And that's what he is. He's a kid who's lost a bunch of times, who got gifted a fight here against Joe Lauzon after winning on the Contender Series. And there's a few things I have to say about the Contender Series here. You're either really good or you're just extremely not good enough. And that's what the Contender Series, I feel like, has shown us so far. You're either very good and you make it, but there's a couple guys on the Contender Series where we never really know how good they are. You never really know how good anyone is coming off the Contender Series. Because you win one fight in front of Dana and you're in the UFC, basically. If you win it in impressive enough fashion. It doesn't matter who you're fighting. If you get a nice flashy KO, you're in the UFC. And either guys from the Contender Series go on their big streaks in the UFC, or they tend to just fizzle out into nothing. And I feel like that's what this guy's going to do, Jonathan Pearce. I don't like this fight for him. I feel like Joe Lauzon's a tricksy veteran. I feel like he's going to be a little bit smaller than this Jonathan Pearce guy, who's a big guy for lightweight. But I feel like Joe Lauzon could win if he just goes out there and spazzes out for the first round. I reckon he can get this one done. He's that experienced. He's going to throw heat in the first round. I feel like he's going to get this one done by submission and finish it from there. This guy he's fighting, if he wins, good for him. I'm sure the UFC doesn't want Joe Lauzon to have a fairy tale ending. I'm sure of it. I'm sure they want their Contender Series guy to come into the UFC, get a big win on the main card of a big event against a big name in Joe Lauzon, and use that steam to carry him forward in his career and pass on some clout from Joe Lauzon. I don't feel like that's what's going to happen here. I feel like this is perfect for Joe Lauzon. A perfect retirement opportunity. For an aging fighter, that is so hard to get a hold of. I think he gets it done. Goodbye. Joe Lauzon by submission in the first round. See you later.